जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यामुनतीरावनचारी यामुनतीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारी गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यामुनतीरावनचारी यामुनतीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ गिरिवर धारी Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtodara Shadra Shri Srimad Abhayacharanavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jaya Vishnu Pad Paramahamsa Parivrajagacharya Ashtodara Shadra Shri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Jai. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktivrinda ki Jai. All glories to these Samal devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to these Samal devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to these Samal devotees. Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Could somebody get me a book? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 1, text number 44. Tatas to rakshaso jato keshanyam vishravasuto Rāvaṇa Kumbhakarṇascha sarva lokopatapano tadasto rakshaso jato keshanyam vishravasuto Rāvaṇa Kumbhakarṇascha sarvalokopatapano tatasto rakshaso jato keshanyam vishravasuto Rāvaṇa Kumbhakarṇascha sarvalokopatapano tatasto rakshaso jato keshanyam vishravasuto Rāvaṇa Kumbhakarṇascha sarvalokopatapano Rakshaso jato keshanyam vishravasuto Kumbhakarṇascha else? Okay. So Rakshaso Jato. Anybody on Zoom? Okay. Tataha, thereafter. To, the two doorkeepers, Jaya and Vijaya. Rakshaso, demons. Jato, born. Keshanyam, in the womb of Keshani. Vishravasuto, the sons of Vishrava. Ravanaha, Ravana. Kumbhakarṇa, Kumbhakarṇa. Cha, and. Sarvaloka, to all people. Upatapano, giving misery. Translation. Thereafter, the same Jaya and Vijaya, the two doorkeepers of Lord Viṣṇu, took birth as Ravana and Kumbhakarṇa, begotten by Vishrava in the womb of Keshani. They were extremely troublesome to all the people of the universe. So I'll read a few more verses. I'll actually finish the chapter because there's only a couple purports. Well, there's 3 purports, but they're quite small and they're mostly just summary. So the rest of the chapter is mostly just summary. So anyway, Nārāyaṇa Muni continued, "My dear king, just to relieve Jaya and Vijaya of the Brahmana's curse, Lord Ramchandra appeared in order to kill Ravana and Kumbhakarṇa. It will be better for you to hear narrations about Lord Ramchandra's activities from Markandeya. In their third birth, the same Jaya and Vijaya appeared in a family of Kshatriyas as your cousins, the sons of your aunt. Because Lord Krishna has struck them with his disc, all their sinful reactions have been destroyed, and now they are free from the curse." Purport. In their last birth, Jaya and Vijaya did not become demons or Rakshasas. Instead, they took birth in a very exalted Kshatriya family related to Krishna's family. They became first cousins of Lord Kṛṣṇa and were practically on an equal footing with him. By personally killing them with his own disc, Lord Kṛṣṇa destroyed whatever sinful reactions were left in them because of the curse of the Brahmanas. Nārāyaṇa Muni explained to Maharaj Yudhishthira that by entering Krishna's body, Shishupal re-entered Vaikuṇṭhaloka as the Lord's associate. Everyone had seen this incident. These two associates, text 47, these two associates of Lord Viṣṇu, Jaya and Vijaya, maintained a feeling of enmity for a very long time. Because of always thinking of Krishna in this way, they regained the shelter of the Lord, having returned home back to Godhead. Purport. Whatever their position, certainly Jaya and Vijaya always thought of Krishna. Therefore, at the end of the mauṣala-līlā, these two associates of the Lord returned to Krishna. There is no difference between Krishna's body and Nārāyaṇa's body. Therefore, although they visibly entered the body of Krishna, they actually re-entered Vaikuṇṭhaloka as the doorkeepers of Lord Viṣṇu. Through Lord Krishna's body, they returned to Vaikuṇṭha, although they seem to have attained sāyujya-mukti in Krishna's body. Final verse. Maharaj Yudhishthira inquired, "O my lord Nārāyaṇa Muni, why was there such enmity between Hiranyakashipu and his beloved son Prahlad Maharaj? How did Prahlad Maharaj become such a great devotee of Lord Krishna? Kindly explain this to me." Purport. All the devotees of Lord Krishna are called Achyutatma because they follow in the footsteps of Prahlad Maharaj. Achyuta refers to the infallible Lord Viṣṇu, whose heart is always infallible. Because the devotees are attached to the infallible, they are called Achyutatma. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 7th canto, 1st chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled "The Supreme Lord is Equal to Everyone." Infallible, yeah. Proves we didn't fall. I was joking. That was a joke. Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So, because we're ending the first chapter of the 7th canto, I'd like to speak a little bit about, of course this has been spoken about, but just because we're entering the 2nd chapter and we're kind of entering into the, I don't want to say the meat, and it's kind of a gross word, but we're entering into the meat of the 7th canto, the essence of the 7th canto, or the substantial portion of the 7th canto. There, it's a better one. I just want to give some context of what we're hearing and what we'll be hearing in the coming classes, because we're kind of at a bit of a junction here in the 7th canto. Maharaj Yudhishthira, now he's asking Narada Muni about the enmity between Hiranyakashipu and Prahlad Maharaj. So this first chapter, the Supreme Lord is equal to everyone, is a setup actually. It's a setup for Shukadeva Goswami's speaking the Nrsimhadev Lila to Parikshit Maharaj. So at the beginning of this canto, Parikshit Maharaj was confused. He was confused as to why Krishna, or why Vishnu, helped the demigods defeat Vritrasura. Because it seemed like Vishnu was taking a side. It seemed like he was favoring the demigods over the demons somewhat unfairly. And Parikshit Maharaj was referring to those statements in Shastra where the Supreme Lord is described as being impartial, as just being the witness, as being just a supervisor. But then he's saying it seems somewhat confusing that Vishnu chose specifically to help the demigods, because it seems like it's a contradiction in his actions. So Shukadeva Goswami then explained to him that actually it's not partiality. It's not partiality, or you could say unfair partiality on the part of Vishnu, but that he reciprocates with the living entities as they reciprocate with him. And this is also stated in Bhagavad Gita. And anybody's free to do that. Anybody, if any of the demons decided, hey, I want to be a devotee, and I want to reciprocate with Krishna in this way, then they'd be accepted. So in that way, Vishnu's open to everybody, but he specifically favors his devotees like that. So he reciprocates with anyone as they reciprocate with him. And now, or then after that, Narada Muni comes into the picture, because Shukadeva Goswami uses this narration at the Rajasuya sacrifice of Maharaj Yudhishthira. When he was performing the Rajasuya sacrifice for his installation onto the throne of the world, he asks Narada Muni this question about Shishupal, because he saw that although Shishupal was such an envious person, he was so envious of Krishna from his very birth. Actually, it's described even, his first words basically were, he couldn't say anything else but blasphemy of Krishna. A really seriously envious person. And so Maharaj Yudhishthira, seeing this, was confused, because he saw that Krishna killed him. And then when Shishupal died, his soul merged into the body of Krishna. So this raised another question about the partiality of Krishna, or the partiality of the Supreme Lord. It's somewhat of a different question, actually, because he's not asking, Yudhishthira wasn't really asking Narada Muni, is the Supreme Lord equal to everybody, or how is the Supreme Lord equal to everybody? He's kind of asking, why? Why is he equal to everybody? Why did he treat Shishupal equally? Because he shouldn't have. because Shishupal was such an envious person, and Krishna didn't reciprocate with him on that level, at least externally. So, and then Maharaj Yudhishthira, he brought up the example of King Vena. King Vena was also, this is in the 4th canto, King Vena was an extremely sinful king. He was I guess you could say in one way, the father of Prithu Maharaj. Some kind of interesting way. They churned his body, and then Prithu Maharaj, somehow or other, there's some churning process. And then Maharaj Prithu and his wife came out of King Vena's body. So, yeah. And so, Maharaj Yudhishthira brought up this example of King Vena, that King Vena was so envious of worship of Lord Viṣṇu. He stopped Brahmanas from performing sacrifice, from performing worship. And also he was just a generally sinful person, even from his childhood. He would kill his friends. He would be playing with his friends, and he'd just kill them whimsically as he liked. And so Yudhishthira asked Narada Muni, he said, well, Vena didn't get this treatment, so what's going on here? And so Narada replied that yes, although they were both envious, the difference is that Shishupal was so envious of Krishna that he was always thinking about him. He was always meditating on him. He was always, but not in a favorable way, but he was always meditating on his envy of Krishna. And in one verse, Narada Muni even says that my opinion is that you can't achieve such an intense level of meditation by being a devotee of Krishna as you can being envious of him, which of course was not necessarily an accurate statement. It was an expression of his humility. But anyway, Shishupal achieved Krishna at the end of his life. Why? Because he was always meditating on him. Like this verse in Bhagavad Gita, yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kaunteya, or tam tam? Yeah, tam tam evaiti kaunteya saratad bhava bhavitaha. That whatever one remembers at the time of death, which implies that also one was remembering it throughout his life, because at the time of death, generally, whatever momentum you've developed throughout your life kind of comes out. So whatever one remembers at the time of death, that he attains. So Shishupal, because he was always envious of Krishna, at the time of death, he remembered Krishna. And so he was allowed to merge into him. And then, so that was one reason. And then Narada brings up this other reason, that actually they were devotees. They were actually not as envious of Krishna as they seemed. It was actually just a setup. And then he told the story of Jaya and Vijaya and how they were cursed by the 4 Kumaras, and how they were sent to this material world to take birth in demoniac families for the purpose of facilitating this pastime of Lord Nrsimhadev and others, and Rāvaṇa, and Ramchandra, and Lakshmana, and Varahadev, yeah. So like this. So why exactly is this the setup for Nrsimhadev Lila? Why is it that there has to be a discussion of the Supreme Lord's impartiality to set up or to introduce the Lila of Lord Nrsimhadev? There could be other discussions also, but this one is specifically chosen. Why? Because Vishnu is about to appear really, really partial, like way more partial than he appeared when he killed Vritrasura, way more partial than he appeared when he killed all these other demons. Because Nrsimhadev is the embodiment or the very form of the Lord's anger. It's going to appear as if Lord Viṣṇu just became really angry, just got really mad and just threw a fit and killed Hiranyakashipu. Externally, it would seem like that. So this philosophical discussion about the Lord's impartiality is relevant because without this philosophical understanding, it's quite a difficult pastime to understand. I remember my uncle came to the LA temple one time. There was no program or anything like that, but I happened to be there, and my uncle lives in LA, and I said, hey, like, anyway. So he came by, and I just showed him around the temple room, and he saw the picture of Lord Nrsimhadev. What's going on here? And I was super new. I was like really new. And so what I told him, I said, yeah, God likes to fight. And so he kind of furrowed his brow. He was kind of like, what do you mean, you know? So if you don't have that philosophical understanding, it's kind of it's a difficult pastime to understand, because it just looks like, wow, this guy's really angry. This God guy is like really fiery, angry kind of guy. So, and actually even Lakshmi, the Lord's consort, couldn't recognize him. When Lord Nrsimhadev was in his, after he killed Hiranyakashipu, and he was just kind of sitting there fuming, and he's got this garland of intestines, and Hiranyakashipu split open on his lap, and he's just sitting there kind of like, like really angry. And Lakshmi's there, and everybody's, telling Lakshmi, like, why don't you go say something to him? He's like, I don't even know if that's him, I don't even know if that's my Vishnu, Yeah, I've never seen him like this. So by this discussion, Shukadeva Goswami is preparing Parikshit for hearing this Lila, this pastime, in proper consciousness, which is a really important point, actually. In Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's Gaudiya Bhashya to the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, there's a discussion about the state of Navadvip at the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And although it's described, Vrindavan Das Thakur describes that although people were reciting Srimad Bhagavatam and reciting all these different Vedic literature, specifically it said Srimad Bhagavatam, they were missing the essence of it, and they were actually spreading more illusion. It was actually like you could say, a manifestation of Maya, that these people were speaking Srimad Bhagavatam, but without the proper philosophical conclusions. So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, in his commentary, he says that when Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita are recited by non-devotees, those who don't have proper consciousness, although they're transcendental, they become just a collection of ordinary, mundane words for the purpose of gratifying the senses. Because recitation of the Lord's pastimes, recitation of Krishna Katha, is meant for what? It's meant for two things mainly. It's meant for glorification of the Supreme Lord and His activities and His qualities and His pastimes, etc. And it's meant for purification of the consciousness, purification of the self. So unless one has proper philosophical understanding, unless one has sambandha gyan, means they know who they are, and they know who Krishna is, and they know the difference between those two, between us and Krishna, and not only the difference, but also the relationship, then neither of these are possible. Because, for instance, unless you know who Krishna is, unless you know Krishna's, for instance, Krishna's quality of impartiality, how everything that Krishna does is actually impartial, but sometimes he seems impartial, then again, one is going to see this pastime of Lord Nrsimhadev as just some manifestation of God just kind of getting angry, just kind of getting frustrated and losing control or something like that. So like this, and then the Srimad Bhagavatam then becomes the subject of one's own mental speculation. And like Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says, it's like eating the mind's bananas, which is a form of sense gratification. Just to speculate and come up with one's own conclusions, thinking that, people... I met some people here relatively recently, a couple weeks ago. They came, and the guy was wearing a big, those tulsi necklaces you see in Vrindavan with like the big, tulsi leaf made of tulsi wood and says like Radhe on it or something like that. He had one of those big. And but they were hippies, you know. Both of them were wearing full tie-dye outfits, tie-dye hat, like everything was tie-dye, you know. But they were hippies. So I asked him. I said, "Where'd you get that?" And he said, "Oh, somebody gave it to me." He said, "I was in Mauritius." It's kind of interesting. He's kind of a far-out guy. He said, "I was in Mauritius studying Sanskrit," and he said, "And somebody gave it to me." And so he's like, "Yeah, Radhe." He's like, "The divine feminine. You know, I wear it to always remember the divine feminine." And then his girlfriend goes, "Aww," and she gives him a kiss. And she's like, and she says, "Maybe I should wear one that says Krishna." So, like this, people don't have the proper philosophical understanding. Why? Because they don't know the difference between themselves and Krishna. They don't know who Krishna is. They don't know who they are. And so, therefore, these things become confusing. They think that Krishna's pastimes are their pastimes, or at least the same as their pastimes, so-called pastimes. But actually, as we've been hearing, the Lord's pastimes aren't so easily understood. They're quite inconceivable. I mean, even just the setup, even just like the introduction, or like you could say, what would you say, like the preparation for Krishna's pastimes. We're having a hard time grasping that, you know. Does the jiva fall? Does the jiva not fall? You know, so much discussion. We haven't even gotten into the actual pastime, you know. So, therefore, Lord Brahma, in his prayers in the 14th chapter of the 10th canto, he says, "Ko veti bhuman bhagavan." This is also quoted in the Chaitanya Bhagavatam, actually. He says, "Ko veti bhuman bhagavan paratman yogeshwarothir bhavatas trilokyam kva vakatam vakati vakadeti vistaryan kridasi yogamayam." He says that he describes Krishna. Our acharyas in the commentary to this verse, they specifically highlight this word bhuman. Bhuman means one who is all powerful, or one who is all opulent. And if you look, all the commentaries of this verse, actually, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev Vidyabhushan, Jiva Goswami, maybe Sanatana Goswami, I think too. But anyway, all of them say this word bhuman means that Krishna's pastimes are absolutely inconceivable. Nobody can conceive of them. Nobody can figure it out. All of them highlight this word. So Lord Brahma says, you know, who can understand the activities or the pastimes of he who is all powerful, he who is all opulent? Yogeshwarotir bhavatas trilokyam, and who is the master of yoga, who's always performing pastimes within the three worlds. And then he says, Kva vakatam vakati vakadeti. He says, as for me, I don't know when, I don't know where, and I don't know how Krishna's you're performing all these pastimes. Yeah, and how many, yeah. And then he says, Vistaryan kridasi yogamayam, because it's you playing. Kridasi literally means you playing with your yogamaya. It's you playing with your internal energy. So these things aren't at all conceivable for us. But despite this, despite Krishna's being all-powerful, despite his ability to, I mean, he's not obliged, like we're hearing here, he's not obliged to anyone. He's impartial to everyone. Specifically, the inconceivable thing we're hearing about here is how he's submitting himself, or how he's becoming the devotee of his devotee. He's reciprocating with the devotion of those who express devotion to him. And this is actually the focus of the 7th canto. Within the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are 10 topics which are discussed. And one of them is uti. Uti means inclination. So the 7th canto is a discussion of uti, of inclination, of favorable inclination, of unfavorable inclination. It means inclination toward Krishna. So some are favorable, some are unfavorable, some are Shuddha Bhaktas, some are pure devotees, some are Mishra Bhaktas or mixed devotees. So it's a description of the different kinds of inclinations that the living entities have for Krishna. And so the real star of the show in the 7th canto is actually not Nrsimhadev. It's actually Prahlad Maharaj. He's actually the center of the narrations of the 7th canto. Why? Because the 7th canto, well, the Srimad Bhagavatam in general, the 2nd verse of Srimad Bhagavatam says, Dharma projita kaita votra paramo nirmatsaranam satam. That it casts away any kind of cheating religion, any kind of adharma or kaitava dharma. Means any kind of materialistic religion. And therefore it's meant for those who are nirmatsaranam satam, who are always non-envious, who are always non-duplicitous, who have no other inclination. Because the Srimad Bhagavatam is meant to establish pure devotional service. And so any discussion of inclination in the Srimad Bhagavatam is ultimately meant to bring one to the point of pure devotional service. So in that way, Prahlad Maharaj is actually, when we think of the 7th canto, often we think about Nrsimhadev. But actually, Prahlad Maharaj is the real center, the real star of the show. Because it's again showcasing his pure bhakti and showcasing the results of his pure bhakti, what that looks like and what that manifests like. In the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, there's a verse: Kleshakni Shubhada Moksha Laguta Krit Sudurlabha Sandrananda Visheshatma Sri Krishna Karshani Chasa. It describes how there's 6 results of performing devotional service. Kleshakni, it casts out any kind of or immediately dissolves all material miseries. Kleshakni, Shubhada, and bestows all auspiciousness. And then Moksha Laguta Akrit, it makes liberation seem very, Moksha Laguta Akrit means it literally makes liberation very small or very insignificant. Sudurlabha, and it's extremely rare. Sandrananda Visheshatma, it immediately puts one in transcendental bliss, transcendental pleasure, which can't be penetrated by anything. Sandrananda Visheshatma, and then the crown jewel of all of the result of devotional service, Sri Krishna Karshani Chasa. It attracts Krishna. This word karsha is actually which means attract, is actually the root of the name Krishna. Sri Krishna Karshani Chasa. It is that which attracts Krishna. So that's what we're seeing here. We're seeing all of these things here. That devotional service, it dissolves all material miseries. Prahlad Maharaj externally was going through so much. He's being put through so much misery by Hiranyakashipu. But by dint of his devotional service, he was unaffected by it completely. And all auspiciousness was bestowed upon him because he got the darshan of Lord Nrsimhadev. He got the darshan of the Supreme Lord. Moksha Lagutakrit. Those who are experiencing devotional service are already liberated. Prahlad Maharaj was already liberated. Liberation means what? It means cessation of material misery, practically speaking, amongst other things. But so Prahlad Maharaj was already liberated. He had nothing already to do with the material world. Moksha Lagutakrit. Sudurlabha is very rare. If you read in the actually, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that this one, Moksha Lagutakrit and Sudurlabha, those results are actually manifested only after the stage of Bhav. Because Bhava Bhakti is very rare. Because we see there's many devotees, there's devotees around. So it's not so rare that it's like practically impossible to conceive of, or that it's like impossible to achieve. But Bhava Bhakti specifically, pure devotion, the devotion that Prahlad Maharaj is experiencing, that is extremely rare. Which is why he's counted as one of the Mahajanas. He's one of 12, Otherwise, there's nobody like him. In all of his, in his family, he comes from a pretty, there are some in his family who are quite noble, Bali Maharaj and others. But, and then Sandrananda Visheshatma, that he is immediately, or one who performs devotional service is immediately put in transcendental bliss, which we see. Prahlad Maharaj is definitely experiencing. Sandra means intense. Yeah, intense spiritual bliss. And then Sri Krishna Karshani Chasa. It attracts Krishna. It obliges Krishna. Hiranyakashipu didn't have to kill Hiranyakashipu. He didn't have to come to kill Hiranyakashipu. But of course, it's all a Lila. But also at the same time, he was attracted by the devotion of Prahlad Maharaj. He was obliged by his devotion. This is also manifest in, or also explained or demonstrated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Advaita, I think this was during the Mahaprakash-līlā, which I guess is more elaborately explained in the Chaitanya Bhagavatam. But I think this is in the Mahaprakash-līlā, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is speaking to Advaita Prabhu. And he's saying, I was there in Vaikuṇṭha, and you were roaring so loud, you were calling for me so loudly. He said that didn't he say that like Vaikuṇṭha was like shaking? You know, it was like an earthquake. He said I couldn't ignore it. He said I had to come. Similarly with Prahlad Maharaj, Nrsimhadev was so personally hurt by seeing Prahlad Maharaj treated in this way, that he had to come. He had to come and save him. He had to come and reciprocate with him like this and kill Hiranyakashipu. And so this 7th canto is meant for showcasing that. It's meant for showcasing that Shuddha Bhakti. There's also discussion of Mishra Bhakti, of mixed devotional service. That comes toward the end of the 7th canto, or you could say almost like the second, or like maybe the last quarter of the 7th canto. There's a discussion of Varnashram. There's a discussion of one chapter is called Instructions for Civilized People, just general kind of cultural things, which are important, actually, which are quite important. These Varnashram principles, these cultural principles are very important. And actually one should study these last parts of the 7th canto, because they're meant for us. They're meant for we're not pure devotees. We actually are Mishra Bhaktas in one sense. We're not Mishra Bhaktas in the sense that we're worshiping Krishna to get something out of it. But we're Mishra Bhaktas in the sense that we have material desires. So these instructions about culture, these instructions about Varnashram are actually meant for us. And they're very useful, actually. To the extent that we can apply them, to that extent, actually they'll facilitate our practice of Krishna consciousness. So they're very important. However, Narada Muni makes it clear that although they're very important, they're actually not the essence. Even in those narrations, Narada Muni, in the last chapter, in one of the last verses actually, there's a set of 3 verses which discuss adharma, the definition of adharma, and specifically discusses 5 limbs of adharma. It says, Vidharma paradharmascha, abhasa upamachalaha, adharma shakav panchema, adharma shakav panchema, dharmagno dharmavatyajet. And then, so there's 5 limbs of adharma. It says vidharma, and then they're described they're defined. So vidharma, paradharma, upadharma, vidharma, paradharma, upadharma, chaladharma, and abhasadharma. Those are the 5. And then so it says dharma bada vidharma syat. Dharma bada means that which impedes dharma, that which impedes the principles of religion. That is called vidharma. And then it says dharma bada vidharma syat. Paradharmonya chodataha. Paradharma means somebody else's dharma. It means we're doing some dharma, but we have the inclination or the constitution of a kshatriya, but we're doing the work of a shudra, for instance, or vice versa. So that's another kind of adharma. And then so paradharmonya chodataha, upadharma stupakando dambo. And then upadharma is that which is introduced by somebody just from their own mental speculation. And then chaladharma is meant for cheating people, for exploiting people. Specific misinformation for the purpose of exploiting people. And then yastvitchayakritav pumbir abhasa hyashamat pratak. And then Abhasa dharma is one who is doing their dharma, or the dharma of their ashram, but not fully doing their dharma, not engaging in all of the aspects of the dharma of their particular ashram. But then, after this, it describes all these adharmas, and then it says, Swabhava vihito dharma kutas kasya neshtav prashantaye. He said, but anyway, even if somebody's doing their dharma fully according to their svabhav, why is it that they're not satisfied? Why is it that this is not satisfying? One's in the position or in the occupation that's most natural for them. So why are they still not peaceful? And Narada Muni then answers. He says, Santushtasya nirihasya svatma ramasya yat sukam kutastat kamalobhena dhavatorte heyadashaha. He says that actually real satisfaction is to be situated in a self-satisfied state, to be satisfied with knowledge of the soul. Santushtasya nirihasya svatma ramasya yat sukam. To be satisfied as a soul, which means to be satisfied in devotional service. And then he says, Kutastat kama lobena davatorte heyadashaha. He says, where is happiness for one who is immersed in lust and greed and is going in all the different directions searching for wealth? So yeah, even in these narrations of Mishra Bhakti, still, Narada Muni makes it very clear that this is Mishra Bhakti, and that this isn't the real thing, and that the real thing is actually developing the devotion that Prahlad Maharaj has. So that's what we'll be hearing about. We can look forward to it. Some really amazing, especially in the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj instructing his classmates. Some really awesome verses in there. Also in this next chapter, in chapter 2, we'll hear some spiritual knowledge spoken by none other than Hiranyakashipu, the Hiranyakashipu Gita, or the Hiranyakashipu Samhita, or the Hiranyakashipu Upanishad, something like that. Anyway, so it's interesting. So anyway, I'll stop there if there's any comment, question.
I looked up the verse, the verse where Hiranyakashipu his anger is overflowing at Prahlad because he tried everything to kill him, he couldn't kill him. And so now he says, Oham Vikatamanasya, because you're speaking, he's talking to Prahlad, so much nonsense, I shall now sever your head from your body. Now let me see your most worshipful God come to protect you. I want to see him. And then so he's actually a devotee. Yeah. He's Jaya and Vijaya. So okay, Krishna's coming.
See him.
So now he wants to see him. He's going to see him.
I got a comment also. You mentioned how you brought your uncle into the temple in L.A. Yeah. Same thing happened with me. My family came into the temple there, and my sister, my elder sister, she saw the picture of Hiranyakashipu and Shringadev, and she said, "Oh my God, that's terrible! Why do you have this in the temple room?" And I explained the whole story, how this person on the lap, he tried to kill his son here, who was a great devotee. Went into the whole thing. She said, "Actually, this is beautiful."
That's funny, yeah.
And then you mentioned how you met this person who had this Radha on his neck, and she said, "I should have Krishna." And I was on book distribution in Australia, and I was offering the Bhagavad Gita to this couple, and I said, "You've heard of Krishna?" He said, "Yes, yes. I am Krishna." And she said, "And I'm Radha." Wow. I said, "Well, everybody thinks that." And then I said, "Well, you know this." Huh?
You told them that?
Yeah. Because basically people think I'm Radha and I'm Krishna. Yeah. So then I said, "Well, you know, this is spoken 5,000 years ago. You're that old?" So this is by the real Krishna. And they took books.
One other comment. I've been here a long time, and we once had this one lady who was coming, and she seemed sincere. She would come to Mangalartik sometime. She was in her mid-20s something. And she would listen carefully to class and things like that. And then one time she made somehow it came up, she was making a comment, or we were discussing after class. And it says, I feel that Krishna came to show us a model for how we should act. And I said, I didn't say anything. I said, I realize she's one of the ones who was like taking the rasa dance. Yeah. We should try to, exactly that the Krishna's pastimes are models for how we should act, rather than we should serve, I think that was the last time we saw her.
It'd be pretty intense if Krishna was supposed to be the model for how everyone's supposed to act. If everyone starts, like literally everyone starts, if everybody becomes a devotee in that way, then everybody's like, it'd be really an intense world.
I have a question, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. So the presentation by Narada Muni about Dharma, and you mentioned the importance, and it's convincing, very important. How would human society, civilized society, function without these dharmas? And there's even the verse, Dharman tu sakshat bhagavat pranit. Directly, real dharma is directly enunciated by the personality of Godhead. So it begs the question, in the Bhagavad Gita, on the 18th chapter, when Krishna says, Sarva dharman parityaja, can you explain that to us, please?
Yeah. So, what Krishna is saying there when he says when he says sarva dharman parityaja, he says mam ekam sharanam vraja, aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayashyami ma shuchaha. Krishna is not necessarily saying give up varnashram dharma. Krishna is saying give up all of those dharmas which are unfavorable to serving me, which are unfavorable. He says mam ekam sharanam vraja. However, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, although varnashram is described as being something which is external, something which is unnecessary, ultimately yes, but it is also described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, ataf pumbir dvida shreshtam varnashrama vibhagashaha svanushtetasya dharmasya samsiddhir haritoshanam. So for a person who is in the materially conditioned state, varnashram is actually a way to facilitate one's surrender to Krishna, which is why our acharyas, specifically Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and our Srila Prabhupada, more so than other Gaudiya Vaishnavas, have emphasized the importance of establishing varnashram on a large scale. Because this is the actual, this is their vision for spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. People talk about bridge preaching. There's bridge preaching, or there's non-bridge preaching, or there's, but actually, varnashram dharma is real bridge preaching. Varnashram dharma is the bridge preaching that Shastra gives. Why? Because it's a material arrangement by which people can be met where they are, and all of their activities can be engaged in the service of Krishna, or at least in the service of the devotees of Krishna. And they're given an opportunity to associate with those devotees, to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada's vision for varnashram communities included having non-devotees live there. People who are willing, who weren't exactly practicing Krishna consciousness, but who were willing maybe to, come to the morning program, come here, come there, and they could have a place to live. They would have a job like this, and they could live. With the idea that those people, they would be engaged in, generally, people like that would be engaged in kind of Shudra work, which is okay. And they would, for instance, work the fields, and they would, harvest, and these things would be offered to the deities. They would get, Bhakti Unmukhi Sukriti for that. And then that Bhakti Unmukhi Sukriti would be cashed in when they associate with the devotees there. And then in this way they'll be purified, and they'll be it'll be easier for them to take up devotional service. So although Krishna says sarva dharman pratyaja mam ekam sharanam vraja, there's different ways of interpreting that. There's different levels to that. So one level is giving up those dharmas which are unfavorable towards serving Krishna, like demigod worship and things like that. And then there's another level, and also accepting, like Daiva Varnashram Dharma, accepting certain regulative principles, which are, you could say, material things, but which facilitate one's surrender to Krishna. And then, but there is also another level that one could also, if one is qualified, just give up everything. Give up all dharma, give up all regulative principles, and just surrender to Krishna. And this is basically the Paramahamsa ashram, the Babaji ashram, that there are certain people who actually are just completely transcendental to Varnashram Dharma. And they don't have any duties per se. They just engage fully in bhajan, full-time in bhajan, all day, every day. And so there's a place for both things. There's a place for both things. Is that an okay answer, Prabhu?
Thank you. Yeah, I like your comments about Varnashram as bridge preaching too. Very interesting.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Prabhu. Is there anybody else who has any questions? Okay, Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.